it is okay to get help when you need it. Because the thing is, most people don't care enough, or they don't have the education or the awareness necessary to take that first step. I was there the whole time. There was no advice given. Don't settle for that at the very end of that left-hand side as premature death. I know this can be confronting, my friends, that your symptoms are information. Awareness is the first step towards change. Have you ever felt pain, discomfort, or persistent fatigue that just won't go away, and you simply brush it off, right? Take a concrete pill, whatever, thinking that this is just part of life? Today, we will talk about why being in pain, let alone quote unquote symptom-free, isn't all there is to your health and well-being. You don't need a prescription, a diagnosis, or to be suffering from a major chronic illness to be taking care of your health. Together, we will unpack a little known other side of the Travis Illness Wellness Continuum and explore what your next right step is so that you can move towards thriving and away from suffering. Welcome to Resonance, a podcast for ambitious, heart-led humans craving more balance, depth, and aliveness in their lives. I'm your host, Vic, health coach, yoga teacher, facilitator, and fellow high achiever, learning to live in tune with my nervous system, not against it. And this space is here to remind you that you can have it all. The career, the success, the fulfillment, all aligned with your truth. Through honest conversations, expert insights, and practical tools, we'll explore how to work with your body, mind, emotions, and spirit, not against them. And the best part, you don't have to stay stuck in survival mode to get there. Because true well-being is not about being perfect. It's about being in resonance. Let's dive in. Welcome. This episode is going to be my last solo episode of 2025. I'm quite excited. It's quite a milestone, I guess. So thank you for being here. If you've been here from the start or you're just completely brand new here, either way, welcome. And watch this space because I might have something special for you lined up for next week, which is going to be our last episode of the year where Resonance was born. So yeah, just gonna leave you on this little cliffhanger there. We're just getting started. But as we dive into this week's episode, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't even know whether I was going to be able to record this because I am coming off the back of a really, really intense weekend. It's interesting. If you've worked with me closely before, you'll probably often hear me speak about how life gives you lessons. And the more you expand your capacity, the more opportunities life sends your way to test that capacity, I guess. And so without getting into too much detail, we had an accident in the household, spent half a day in the hospital. Everyone's okay. Everyone's safe. It wasn't me. It was my partner. He is well in recovery. But that is really the context that inspired this week's episode, because I got a sneak behind the curtain of what we kind of, see as the traditional healthcare model. And with the work that I do and the context that I have, it really kind of brought to life for me the importance and the nature of the work that you and I do here together. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to really clearly differentiate between healthcare and sick care. We are going to unpack the different types of care available to you, because it's not just your standard doctors in lab coats or your nurses. You always get a second opinion. So more on that in just a moment. And we'll also talk about why you don't need to be in pain or miserable to take care of yourself or your health, and what you can do starting today. She's a juicy one, so make yourself comfortable. Grab me with you on your walk, on your drive to work, whatever suits you. Let's dive in. Okay, so I want to begin with why our conventional healthcare model is in reality a sick care model. Even in my health coach training program, I was taught that the traditional conventional healthcare model is really more like a disease management system, where most of the resources that are spent in healthcare are spent on managing chronic health conditions and symptoms thereof, rather than promoting long-term wellness and prevention of those chronic health conditions arising in the first place. And look, don't get me wrong. There is a time and a place for this. It is incredible for acute emergencies, kind of like the case that we had just this weekend. But in no way is it suitable in moving us forward as a collective species. Because yes, there is a time and a place where the conventional healthcare model as we know it today evolved from. It evolved from warfare. It evolved from when soldiers were out in the field stepping on mines and having their limbs blown off, right? Yes, of course, like all you cared about at that point is like, is this person going to be able to stay alive? And like, do we chop a limb off? And that's just not where we're at as a collective species anymore. And so before I get too far into this episode, I really also just want to preface this and be crystal clear that I think that our doctors and our nurses are so, so important and they should be respected. Like, honestly, after this weekend, especially, I'm just like, hats off. You are all incredible humans. You are so understaffed, you are, underpaid, and yet you are here helping those in need. And yeah, they're amazing people, and I respect them and the work that they do so, so much. And I want to inform you so that you are well educated. And next time you might be finding yourself in a position like this, that you have the agency, the information, the tools, and the ability to speak up for yourself, because the conventional healthcare model as we know it today is not all there is. And so with that in mind, let me share with you the different types of care that are available to you. And this is just like a little sprinkle, but it will start to plant some seeds. So what most of us are familiar with, right? It's like our GP, our doctor, the hospital, the emergency room. That's basically all sitting under the umbrella of conventional medicine, right? Where it's your standard healthcare model. They focus on treating the symptoms, right? So you come to the doctors, you're like, I have a sore throat. Help me. Here's some medicine. You are fine. Or whatever else it is. And of course, same goes for, I have had an accident and I need to make sure that I don't have a brain tumor and please stitch me up. Like it's amazing for these things. And at the same time, unfortunately, in our modern society, especially with all these authorities that we have in place, right? Like there's almost this unspoken authority of like the person in the lab coat in front of you. And especially as women, but all humans, I find that we have been conditioned to hand our power over to authorities, be it a policeman, a doctor, a teacher, parents, whoever, right? The president, whatever. And let this be like your first little nudge to please stop giving your power away. Because not me, not any doctor, not any specialist or scientist in the history of the world is as much of an expert in you as you are yourself. Please, if you think that there's something going on with you personally and you feel like you're not being heard or you're not being listened to or you're not being taken care of or you're maybe being dismissed, like, oh, you're just making up your symptoms, or well, there's no clinical diagnosis, here's a prescription and make it go away, like next patient, please. Don't settle for that. Like, please, I have seen that happen so many times. I have experienced it myself. I really, really, really want to encourage you to get a second or a third opinion. And like some of my personal examples, I mean, like the most basic one, which still blows my mind. I was literally talking to my therapist about this. Very, very recently, is when I was little, I was like 16. I got chickenpox, and there's actually quite a late time to get chickenpox, and I assumed I had chickenpox because I am a nerd, and that just kind of seemed quite obvious to me. So I came to the doctor and I said, "Hello, Mr. Doctor, I think I have chickenpox. Help." The doctor assesses me and goes, "No, you're fine. Go home." I go home, I sleep a night, more rashes, more chickenpox. I send a photo off to one of my best friends who's actually still really close in my life, and her parents, and yeah, it's chickenpox. Got a second opinion. Of course it was chickenpox, and kind of quarantine, everything. Boom. This was like a GP, guys. I came there with a self-diagnosis, which doctors don't like, by the way, because again, this whole power dynamic does go both ways, right? Someone needs to almost be that wielder of the power. And yet I was right in the first place because I knew my body. I knew the symptoms I was experiencing. Another example, I have an acquaintance recently who's been dealing with a really long-term chronic health issue, and a similar kind of situation where there's been this underlying feeling of something being wrong, and yet there's been no diagnosis. With these things, it's always so hard because it's like you're searching for a needle in a haystack. So a lot of testing, a lot of effort is required, and the healthcare system is unfortunately under a lot of pressure. It's really under-resourced. So it's easier to just brush you off and make you go away than seek the root cause. But thank goodness this person's, been quite forward and proactive in their own health management. And from what I've heard, they are on the upward now and kind of got the right specialists and got the right work done. And I guess the third example that I have for you is similarly how my story started, right? And the skin rash that I developed that to this day remains undiagnosed from a clinical perspective. And at the same time, I know that at the very core root of that skin flare-up was chronic stress. It was emotional trauma. It was triggers, mental health. There's so much there. And yet no specialist could put a finger on it. So I say that to encourage you to listen to your intuition, to listen to your body, pay attention to the symptoms, pay attention to the things that are coming up for you, because every symptom, pain, everything that seems out of the ordinary, right? Like when the body is out of balance, when it's out of homeostasis, that is your body's way of communicating with you. And once you identify that, and I say if you're not satisfied, I don't think that it's just when you're not satisfied. I generally believe that we all deserve an integrative approach, which I'll talk to in just a moment. But so I wanted to share with you the other types of care available to you, such as alternative medicine. And there are so many different avenues of alternative medicine. There's Ayurveda, which I'll actually dedicate an episode to in a couple of weeks' time. So kind of put a little pin in that one. There's things like traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, naturopathy, like herbal medicines, etc. And these are alternative views of medicine that are not taught in traditional med school. And often they actually tend to have much more deeper, much more ancient roots than the conventional medicine system that we know today. So if you kind of put a different hat on, it's like actually these schools of thought, and the more you learn about them, the more you kind of see how interconnected they are and how they're saying the same thing in different ways. You may start to realize that there's so much more to your health and well-being than just meets the eye in what you might read in like the BMJ or something, which is the British Medical Journal, for those of you who don't know. And then the third type of care available is functional medicine. So I am a huge proponent of functional medicine. So it is on the rise, and these are doctors who have trained in med school, and they also take a holistic approach where they identify the root cause of your symptoms and diseases, and they treat that rather than just the symptom, right? So let's say, for example, like you have chronic back pain. and you just keep seeing your conventional medicine doctor and they just keep prescribing you pain medication and you get hooked on those meds and that's it. That's kind of, here you go. You're just dealing with this for the rest of your life. Congratulations. You have won the popping pills lottery. No. What a functional medicine doctor would do is they would go through really, really rigorous testing until like finally something comes together, right? Because the thing is, like, there's actually so many more tests out there available for you, but most common GPs won't tell you about them, A, because they're expensive, and B, because it's like, well, I can just put a little band-aid on this gaping wound and she'll be right, and off she goes, and if she's about to die, she'll come back, right? But it's like, no. You really need to stand in your power and advocate for yourself and use your voice. And I'll come back to this in a moment. But effectively, a functional medicine practitioner will, let's say, like, yeah, you've got that chronic back pain, and sure, they may give you something to help you navigate the symptoms in the short term, but they'll also look at everything else, right? They'll look at your lifestyle as well, right? Let's say you've got a really high stress load and you're mostly sedentary, you're not moving, you've got really, really poor sleep patterns, you're malnourished because you're eating junk food, you're not getting the right nutritional balance, and all of these things. Like, there is so much more, almost if you think about it as like this, the way I was taught in my health coach training program is to envision it like a tree, right? And in a tree, what the conventional medicine system tends to look at is just the leaves, or maybe sometimes the branches of the tree. But then in functional medicine, as you dive deeper, you go all the way to the root. Like, if the leaves are like withering and falling off, there's clearly something going on at the root that needs to be addressed. You can't just snip that little branch off and hope everything else is going to get better. You can in the short term, but it generally doesn't work out in the long run. And then lastly, the fourth type of care available to you is integrative medicine. And that is the approach that uses all of the above. So that is the one that weaves in conventional, alternative, and functional medicine all together. And it is the way of the future. And I was really appalled at what I witnessed in the ER this weekend, because there's just, to be honest, I'm really conscious of understaffing and resourcing, right? So I'm trying not to be too judgmental, but like, you've got someone there with a potential brain injury and it took them 6 hours to even get cleaned up, let alone some pain medication. And I could hear so many different people just like asking for water and being like, I'm so thirsty, no one's coming to see me. And these are just like absolute basics, let alone, so this is like survival, right? This is like warfare level survival, let alone kind of being sent home with a little pamphlet that obviously the patient's not going to read because they're dealing with pain, and not informed of anything else, like any lifestyle measures, any other alternative measures they can do to support their health and recovery. So for example, things like nutrition to support brain health recovery, or mental emotional support needed after dealing with a traumatic injury. Like, there's none of that. And I feel that really strongly about the fact that, integrative medicine is so needed, and it's never become as clear and as evident for me as it has this weekend. And so with that in mind, let's kind of pivot into why you don't need to be in pain or miserable to take care of yourself and your health. Because please don't let yourself land in the ER or at the GP when you're like barely hanging on by a thread. And I understand this isn't a judgment, right? This isn't a judgment or pointing fingers or anything. I see that we have been conditioned in this sick care model where, it's really, really hard to just get your basics met. I understand this and where it's come from, but that then ripples out into your conditioning, right? Like, especially here in New Zealand, oh my gosh, it is so common for people to be like, oh no, I'll just take a concrete pill and she'll be right, whatever, don't need anything. Like, please, listen. It is okay to get help when you need it. And it is also okay to seek better ways of being and living, even when things seem quote unquote okay on the surface. And this is where I want to introduce you to the Travis Illness Wellness Continuum. So I'll include a link to this below because it comes with like a really nice visual that I'm going to do my best to describe on the podcast. But effectively, the Travis Illness Wellness Continuum, imagine it as just like this line, right? Like this continual line. And Travis says that wellness is a process. It is never a static state. So throughout our whole life, we are somewhere along on this line. And imagine the middle, right? It is kind of a neutral point. And you see, the thing is that most of us think of health and wellness just in terms of illness, like just in terms of what I've just described to you, like, oh, it hurts. I'm sick. Let's go get help. And we assume that just because you don't have any illness, that you are well. Right? But the thing is, there are actually so many degrees of wellness, just as there are many degrees of illness. And so what the Travis Illness Wellness Continuum illustrates is you've got this neutral point in the middle of it, which is your neutral state. That is where you're basically like symptom free. There are no noticeable kind of health conditions or issues. And then as you move down the left-hand side to the continuum, you've got, I think the first step is sort of like signs, right? Early warning signs. So think like maybe that scratchy throat or frequent migraines, whatever it is. Again, most things that people just put up with in their day-to-day life thinking that's normal. It is not normal. And let's say you don't get help or you just keep doing what you're doing, aka keep perpetuating this vicious cycle, and these signs start to manifest into bigger symptoms, right? And then it might get a little bit more serious. And it goes even further to the left, right? Where it goes into like serious health conditions and chronic issues. And unfortunately, at the very end of that left-hand side is premature death. However, there's also this other right-hand side of the continuum that not enough of us are talking about, which is beyond the neutral point where you are simply just symptom-free. You have stages like awareness, growth, places where you actually learn how to work with your body so well that you can thrive. And there is no end point on there. Let me tell you something, there is. The better it gets, the better it gets. And unfortunately, so many of us are living in this signs and symptoms paradigms already too far down that left-hand side of the continuum. And they're happy with the neutral point. It's like, oh, I woke up and I finally don't have any back pain today. What a great day. Thinking that is all there is to life. But let me tell you something. That couldn't be further from the truth. And I'm not going to lie. Yes, it takes effort. It takes dedication. It is not easy. However, once you finally realize, and I see this firsthand, I witness this with clients, with friends, with family members all the time, that as soon as they begin to feel better, that the momentum is there, right? Like Newton's law of motion, an object in motion stays in motion. They keep moving forward. They keep feeling better and better and better. And then sure, maybe little things might come in and kind of sweep them off to the side a little bit and knock them off center, but they know how to get back on the bandwagon. And they know that simply being symptom free isn't the only way to get there. So here's what you can do starting today. First of all, never, ever, ever underestimate the power of your personal lifestyle factors. And look, this is where coaching comes in, right? Like, I get it. The doctors are busy helping patients. They are highly qualified. They have so much knowledge and they got to do what they got to do. But people need support beyond the 5 minutes with the specialist who is just going to send them a prescription and give them some advice and send them on their way, right? Like, we cannot rely on people to have the grit, the motivation, the ability to build their own habits and change their life all on their own. Because the thing is, most people don't care enough, or they don't have the education or the awareness necessary to take that first step. And a really, really great example that I again witnessed this weekend, right, is like, a patient being sent home with some general medical advice, with some general lifestyle advice. First of all, that was just like super top. It wasn't even spoken to. It was just like, oh, and here's some lifestyle advice, but of course you can just do your own thing. And it was interesting because I went through the medical notes and it had a few kind of things about the patient, and it was like, oh yeah, lifestyle advice given about this and this and this. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I was there the whole time. There was no advice given. So it is really infuriating, but I'm just channeling my rage for the betterment of society. So my invitation to you this week is, depending on where you find yourself on the Travis Illness Wellness Continuum, right? So first invitation is for those of you that might have signs or symptoms, be it physical, mental, emotional, whatever they are, right? Know this, that your symptoms are information. They are the underlying issue that you can see visibly of a deeper cause or effect, right? Just like my skin flare-up was the most visible issue of a much deeper burnout, chronic stress, reliving trauma, re-traumatizing. It was a lot. It was a whole melting pot. But I'm just kind of giving you an example so that you've got something to go with. Write them out. Write out your symptoms. And I know this can be confronting, my friends. This is just, I'm giving you an invitation that you can do on your own if that is the path you choose to take. However, you don't have to do this on your own. Like, I am here for you, and I'll talk to that in just a moment. But if you do choose to go the lone warrior path, I invite you to write out your symptoms, their severity, like how you feel when they come up. Really dig into it, because we have this tendency as human beings to just brush our symptoms to the side and like make them want to go away and just take like a painkiller or whatever to just numb. However, the more information you can gather about things like when these symptoms arise, when they flare up, etc., gather as much data as you can and keep a close eye on them. Because from that perspective, you can see if you can spot any connections between your symptoms and other areas of your life, right? So for example, whether it's things like lifestyle or nutrition or stress load, maybe workload, sleep, etc., right? Like, oh, I notice I always get that little eye twitch when I'm talking to this person at work, or whatever it is, right? Like, you'll probably already start to form some connections in your brain. And you've heard me say this before, and I'll say it another million times until it lands. Awareness is the first step towards change. At this stage, once you've done this little bit of self-inquiry, there's likely going to be one connection for you that sticks out like a sore thumb. And I invite you to start there. That area of your life, whatever you've identified, just begin mining that and seeing if you can make small, tiny, doable shifts. But that's the secret. Small, tiny, doable shifts. Don't try and overhaul your life overnight. That doesn't work. That's why you'll end up back to square one, or maybe even 5 steps behind. Now, for my friends who are listening that are symptom-free, and so to speak at the neutral point of the Travis Illness Wellness Continuum, ask yourself the question, what in my life am I tolerating right now? What in my life am I tolerating? Like, what is something that I'm just like, okay, that's good enough. It's fine. Start there, because the better it gets, the better it gets. And let me tell you something, you deserve so much more than just good enough. You deserve so much more than just, oh, I didn't have any pain today. There's so much more out there for you. And once you begin to thrive and feel great in your body, mind, and spirit, this is the space from which you create and co-create this incredible world and new earth that we are all ushering in together. Now, this is brave work. This is hard work. It is work that is much easier done with someone than on your own. And so if you've been listening along and you feel like, okay, I think I know I need to do something, but I'm not quite sure how, I would love to invite you to book a complimentary stress reset session. You'll hear more details about it in just a moment. But in the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening. This was an episode that was inspired by a really intense life event, and it definitely shined a light on many different areas of life, society, and our culture as a whole. And if there's even just one tiny thing that you take away from this, being the fact that you don't need to be miserable all the time, that there is a better way. Let it be that. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, have a fabulous rest of your week. Happy Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. Happy Hanukkah if you celebrate Hanukkah. All the best. Enjoy the holidays. Stay in resonance. Whatever family life stressors come your way, remember they are just stressors. At the end of the day, you can always reach out to me if you need a hand to come back to center. And I wish you the very, very best. Sending so much love. Bye for now. Okay, if you are listening to this and thinking something has got to change, but I don't know where to start, you are so not alone. This is exactly why I offer stress reset sessions, which are free one-on-one calls where we gently explore what's feeling heavy right now and what's possible instead. There's no pressure, no commitments, no fixing, just a little bit of space to exhale, reflect, and reconnect with what you need. So if this sounds like something that your nervous system would love, you can book a session through the link in the show notes below, through my website liveandhealth.co, or through the link in my socials at liveandhealth. Come as you are, and we will take it from there. The views and opinions expressed by guests on Resonance are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of me, Viktoria Levenberg, Live and Health, or anyone working within the Live and Health brand. This space welcomes a diversity of ideas, experiences, and stories, and part of Resonance is learning to take what aligns and gently leaving the rest. Also, while I am a national board certified health and wellness coach and deeply passionate about well-being, this podcast is intended for educational and inspirational purposes only. Resonance does not substitute personalized medical, psychological, or therapeutic advice. Always seek guidance from qualified professionals for any physical, emotional, or mental health concerns.